Welcome back to episode 14 of the Union 0430. Once again, we don't have a full house here again tonight. Dave is doing testing, Mark is fishing, but we got that beautiful man down in Oshawa, Phil. And we got Ryan. Finally, Ryan makes it back to the show after, I think, what was it, 6 episodes, Ryan? You were away?
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was so quiet. I could do what I want. It was awesome.
So Ryan was away, and Ryan's down in Nova Scotia. I'm in Kingston, Ontario, as you know. I really wanted to leak this out today about a special guest coming on tonight, but I thought, no, I'm totally going to save it. Very, very happy and excited to introduce Mr. Brad Sanders. That's all the way just recently back stateside, coming to us with from Dixie Decoys. Brad, it is an absolute pleasure. Like you said earlier, it seems like we've known each other for a while. This is the first time we're doing a face-to-face, but it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, buddy.
Well, thanks for having me on. And yeah, it's kind of interesting how you get to know people over 3+ years now or whatever via social media, and you just pick up conversations like you've known them forever, and then finally see their face, and it's like, wow, yeah. It's just a different experience of the modern age.
And this is a really cool episode because it's so on a number of things. One, you're a veteran-owned business yourself, which is really, really cool in my mind. As most people know, I'm a veteran-owned business too, no big deal. And the other second part is that one of your original staffers is one of the panelists of the union. How fucking cool is that, Philly?
It's an absolute pleasure to be able to represent Dixie Decoys, everything they stand behind, their message, and about how they carry about business and their meaning behind things. It's an absolute honor.
Very well said, Phil.
Not to toot the horn, Brian.
How many times did you rehearse that?
Hey, it's good, man. It's good that you've done the rehearsal. Brad, I know this is crazy times. Like I mentioned, you're just back stateside now. I know last week when we talked, you were, Damien, I don't know when I can come on. I got to get over and pick up my dog that I haven't seen in 2 years. And you're just back from Australia. A very a good tour duty over there. Done some wonderful things. The brand, I think, has really blown up, especially with the the Dixie Decoy, and then you got the Waterman apparel line, which seems to have exploded in my mind. And you're doing that from Australia. You're running everything. Like, multitask much, or
Yeah. Yeah, well, if you're going to start a business, I certainly wouldn't recommend you doing it within weeks of you leaving for 3 years. But what I will say is, like, I'm the guy that does the podcast, right? And it's my voice on social media. That's kind of what I do, and that was a function of what really all I could do. I can't go to shows. I can't pack orders. I can really kind of point my finger and say, Brandon, my business partner, say, can you do this? Way we had to kind of divvy it up was I directed the company, but really it was Brandon running the company. So I think, my absence, it serves as a testament to the work ethic, the skill of my business partner and brother-in-law, Brandon Causey, to the creative genius of Keith Hendrickson, and for guys like Phil, who are the hands and feet of our brand, going out there and not just spreading our message, right? Not just saying the words, but living it day to day. And so Phil could probably comment on this. Like, we're always challenging them to hold themselves to a higher standards, to get out there and like, and achieve outcomes, not like sell things, not promote this. Certainly that's part of it, but like we are trying to affect a positive change in the waterfowl, the sporting community writ large, but really in Phil's local circle, you know, in our guys in North Carolina, or our guys in California, or our guys in Australia in their local circle. So really, you know, I'm blown away that, well, I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but, you know, that while I was gone, you know, really the brands have been built on the backs of everybody but me. And I just hope that now that I've returned, I don't get in the way of what they've built.
No, that's awesome, and you know, well done to you in recognizing the fact that your business partner has done a bunch of that heavy lifting, right? And you, no disrespect, but just being a pretty face, you know, and doing that. That's my claim to fame too. I'm just the voice in my broken English.
Sure.
But you know what? I listened to your podcast last week that you had done with another company, and I don't think I fully realized the idea behind Dixie Decoy and why you went the route that you went until you really started talking about, you know, the history of your area, and this is the decoy of your area. And you know, for our listeners that are probably not real familiar with Dixie Decoy, or B, they are, but they don't really know, and they didn't get the opportunity to listen to the same podcast I did. Do you want to, you know, give us just a rundown on, you know, why you started Dixie, why you went the route you did?
I'm so glad that your question was why and not what. Yeah. And so Phil he's just starting on his head, because we talk a lot about our why. Like, we are a mission. I'm a Marine, right? We're a mission-centered company. We are driven by our why, by our purpose, task, purpose, end state. What are we trying to achieve, right? And our why is not to make and sell decoys, okay? Mm-hmm. Our why is transformative, for restorative first, and transformative just following that, right? It's about restoring the soul of this sporting tradition of ours, restoring it and preserving it. So, you know, our why is to help you preserve your traditions. I'm not saying Brad's traditions, not Phil's traditions, not Damien's traditions. Whatever your sporting tradition is, we want to give you the tools, the resources, but most importantly, the inspiration to preserve your tradition. And we think if we can affect that change in your heart and in your family, then our sporting lifestyle, which is always under threat, then we'll preserve those larger, you know, the cultural sporting traditions. So why did Dixie Decoys happen? It's because we felt a need that the sporting community, particularly the waterfowl community, but the sporting community in general, it's a bit commercialized, a bit not so family focused. The tie-in with history and the historical style decoys and historical style apparel is more just about having a tangible good in your hand that acknowledges that somebody many years ago took the time to preserve their traditions for you to enjoy today. So the historical side that people, you know, they'll start throwing out buzzwords. What's Dixie Decoys? What's history? It's tradition. It's old school. Those are all things, yes, but we're actually more about preserving your traditions today. The historical stuff, our style, isn't just it's not just like a tacit acknowledgement, or like a, you know, mere nostalgia of, oh, that it looks cool. Certainly looks cool. But it's not just that. It's really having that reminder in your hands that you have a lot of heritage underpinning your current activities. So that was the why behind Dixie Decoys. And I'd be curious to see Phil's interpretation of what he's been hearing me spew and what it means to him. So like Phil, I would ask, you as your staff member, but I would ask a customer, you know, like, how does Dixie Decoys help you individually preserve your traditions?
I think to counter that, like it's really like my vision is working now for the future. Like if it's not for us now, what are our kids gonna have to hunt? What are our grandkids gonna have to hunt, right? And you know, it's on top of like I said, Brad's mission and whatnot. It's like supporting those organizations such as like DU and Delta, you know, that habitat restoration, giving back to say organizations like that, giving back to the community, giving back to the youth, and steering them, obviously the youth, steering them down the right path to say like, you know, these are some of the things that you need to be involved in. So your kids will have this and their kids will have this and so forth. It's not, you know, the big flashy limits and the big lifted trucks and, you know, the big decoy rigs and all this other jazz. It's getting back to the soul of what waterfowling is.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And you know what? And that's, again, Brad and fellas, I had talked to Brad earlier before we hit record, and I had said, you know, this is my theory, and I think a lot of people would agree with the theory until it comes time to actually start putting money down, right? So they'll agree, hey, listen, we need to keep these traditions. We need to keep things simple, and we need to have family, and we need to uphold the traditions and all of that stuff. And that's awesome. And you know what, Brad, there's a bunch of buzzwords that come out when people start having that conversation, as well as traditions and restoration and all that stuff. And that's great. And it's great to hear. And it's great to see that a company and a business is focused on that. But when it comes to me heading out, and now listen, I love Dixie Decoys. And Brad, you know, I would have Dixie Decoys tomorrow if the Canadian government didn't charge so much money to get product into Canada. We'll go back to that in a couple seconds. But when I'm trying, and Phil, you would know more so because you're out there, you're using the product and you're talking, because I'm sure you have people that are asking you, why are you using Dixie Decoy? Why are you using? Why aren't you just going to the store and buying these foam filled things for $50 a half dozen? Do you know what I mean? So I guess this is a really long-winded way of saying, listen, I agree, and I love the fact of tradition and keeping all those things. But when you got to talk to a person, how do you convince that person that the tradition, saving the tradition, is worth more than the $20 you're going to save on a half dozen decoys?
Sure. Well, look, you know, how do you convince them? Like, as much as you enjoy doing what you're doing, the phrase that I use is, we are only the next generation away from losing our tradition. So, you know, if you want to do this, if you want to continue to do this, even in your later ages, if the next generation doesn't want to pursue it, they're the ones out there buying and not buying the product. And they're the ones that are going to be lobbying or not lobbying government. They're going to want, you know, when you're too old to get out there to clean up the marsh and build the wood duck boxes and things, they're going to be the ones to do it. And if they're not doing it, then it, you know, could very well affect you while you are still active in it. But there's really, you know, people want our products for two principal reasons. The first is because they thirst for a connection to their heritage. Okay, so that's what we do. Like, what is it you say you do here? We offer historically influenced decoys and apparel that provide the heritage thirsting watermen a direct and tangible connection to their past and an opportunity to use those to preserve their future. Okay, that's the first reason they buy our products. The second reason goes into all of the like the you know, the bulletized list of why I think we offer a superior product. So yes, our decoys we are a like mission first, why-centered company. It just so happens we make a really damn good decoy. Okay, so why do you buy a foam decoy over a plastic decoy? Well, let's talk about foam-filled decoys. I think foam-filled companies that put foam inside of their decoys, it's nothing more than just a tacit admission that plastic decoys are inferior. Because if plastic decoys were superior, you wouldn't have to put foam in them, right? So foam decoys been around since the 60s and before that, but really taking off with the Herder's brand in the 60s. Those are made out of expandable polystyrene, or EPS. That's that white bead foam. So the Herder 72, like the iconic foam decoy platform, right? That there's still, there you go. That's awesome.
Blueprint's right there.
So those decoys are still being, it's 2020, those decoys from the 1960s and beyond are still being hunted today, right? Because through wrestle coating, which is mixing wood glue and some sort of coating media like corncob grit or crushed walnut, that, or wrapping in burlap and tile mastic, you basically create an impenetrable shell on the outside of this foam, and you can shoot the decoy and shoot it and shoot it and shoot it. Not directly. If you do that, you destroy the decoy. But what I'm saying is, like, when you got like sea ducks or blackheads or something that are taking low over the decoys, shoot, take your shots with confidence. You do that over regular plastic decoys, they're just going to sink, okay? And that's why you get foam-filled decoys. They perform better on the water, and really all of this is, I do have to state, like, it's subjective, because so much of it depends on your individual hunting scenario, okay? So if you're hunting out of a big diver hunting boat, okay, you got a layout boat, you got your tender boat, and you can put 120 decoys in there, and you're, it's 24 foot, 28 foot long, like, weight is not an issue to you, okay? And this is just physics, folks. If you're hunting big water, a heavier decoy is actually better. So, lighter's better, like, yes, if you have to walk in with 6 dozen decoys on your back, you probably don't want a 2 pound or like a 4 pound. You probably don't want that, right? But if you really want a steady decoy that actually rides the water and doesn't just, bob up and down like this, you actually do want a heavier decoy, okay? But if you're hunting smaller water, for your puddle ducks, you're probably going to want a lighter decoy, unless you're like a, Great Lakes hunter, like south of Lake Michigan. That's where I grew up. And, so you can kill mallards out there, and that's big water. So you can, you can use like a heavier mallard. Back to the point, it's all about what do you need for your individual hunting scenario, right? But for longevity's sake, a foam decoy will outperform a plastic decoy any day of the week. And that's why there are foam decoys from the 1960s being hunted today. And you don't really find too many paper mache decoys. So the Carry Lights and the Victors and those sorts of things, you don't see those around. And you probably won't see the modern plastic decoys around in too many years, right? People talk about, the Oklahoma brand of plastic decoys, American made, fantastic stuff, been hunted since the 80s and stuff, like definitely a thicker gauge plastic, all well and good, but steel's going to beat, a steel BB is going to beat a plastic decoy any day of the week, right?
Big time.
So that would be some of the sort of like the performance reasons why people choose our decoys over another decoy, in addition to the reason of wanting to have that direct and tangible connection to their past.
So Brad, yeah, I'm definitely a big decoy fan, a decoy nut. Every time I question my wife about a financial decision, she quickly reminds me of the thousands of dollars I've invested in plastic ducks and geese. I liked how you talked about the heritage, and I think one of the biggest things that sets your brand apart from any other decoy brand on the market is the blanks. I love the blanks. The ability, like, we're not all wood carvers here. We don't all have that equipment to make a decoy, but anybody can pick up a paintbrush and a blank and kind of make it their own. So where did that inspiration come from for you guys? What was that, just direct tie to the heritage of the whole thing, or where did that idea come from? Because I think it's one of the things that sets you guys apart from a lot of decoy brands.
Well, that originally sort of came out of necessity. Before Dixie Decoys was really Dixie Decoys, I was making foam decoys in my garage using a standard aluminum mold, mixing the 2-part urethane together. It expands, you break the mold, comes apart. And then so it is a DIY process. So I was part of that foam decoy tradition dating back to the 60s and before that, of, you know, herders, and then on to the other foam decoy brands that have come out of Ohio and Pennsylvania. That's sort of like the mecca of foam decoys. So I was kind of part of that, doing it myself. And then we had this idea of creating a different mold, something that was unique, because those aluminum molds that you would get, like everybody was doing the same thing, right? And my decoys were kind of getting popular, and by popular, that's very relative. But basically, I was getting enough sort of like Facebook kind of orders that I couldn't keep up with it. So, well, let's do something different, right? And try to capitalize on this. And so that's how we found Keith Hendrickson. And it was really that talk with Keith Hendrickson to see his, sorry, this is going to be a big, long answer. We're going to get back.
Go for it, buddy.
We got lots of time.
Found Keith Hendrickson, and he's known for his carving of contemporary antiques. So he's inspired by carvers along that you would have seen around the turn of the 20th century and into the early to mid 20th century in Southeast Virginia and on the Carolina coast. So he sort of brings those carver styles back to life and antiques them so they look old. I saw that and I was like, man, just like a sucker for history as I am, that spoke to me. And so then the idea, sort in talking with Keith, evolved of, well, what we want to do then is want to make a modern decoy with all of the modern technology that you demand on the water. You want a foam decoy that is indestructible, right? You want it to ride well. You want it to self-right. You want all these things, but we're going to make it look like, and this is the difference between us. You make duck decoys to look like ducks, right? Like that's the purpose. Dixie Decoys takes a counterintuitive approach. We make duck decoys to look like old duck decoys, right? So if you look at our decoys, and if you're not familiar with the brand or you're not familiar with decoy history, you might look at that, and there you go. And Phil, that's one of the he photographed that really, really well, and I share that picture quite often. You might look at that decoy and you're like, where's the eyes and where's the feather detail and all of this, like that looks like a second grader made that. Well, we're actually reviving a historical style of decoy carving that it wasn't like just popular, like everybody used this. They were working tools. They were not designed to sit on shelves. They were not designed to win competitions and ribbons in world-class events. That's not what they were. Really rural, salt of the earth, like barely scraping by watermen who in their spare time would carve decoys for the gentlemen's duck clubs on the coast of the Carolinas and Virginia. So super just basic, crank them out, tools, no eyes. Phil, hold that up again. So this is called a block style paint scheme. Block style means clean cut lines, right? So you notice we're not fading in between that. Mm-hmm. It's just black, white, black with that burnt sienna head, right? Get it, paint it, get it done, on to the next one, because we're producing dozens and dozens and dozens of these for duck clubs on the coast. That's what we've revived here. So we've given you all of that modern technology with the historical style. What we do is we make duck decoys to look like old duck decoys, right? So if you've ever questioned like, oh, and we get the comments, Phil will chuckle, he's seen them before, like, oh, those ducks don't have eyes, they'll never kill anything. My ducks, I love this one. My ducks need this, they need this, they need this. Like, and somehow the migratory birds that happen to overfly your hunting area that have been doing that for literally millions of years somehow now need something. They need something, okay? We can talk about why that's important and why you should acknowledge what makes you comfortable, but please do not argue in the absence of peer-reviewed research from waterfowl biologists. Please do not argue that something needs to be present, right? Because in the absence of that, we're going to side, in terms of the argument of effectiveness, we're going to side with hundreds of years of gunning decoy success. That's what we're going to do. So Keith and I sort of brainstorm this up. That's the style we go with. And then trying to figure out, well, how do we get these painted to sell to people? I'm going to Australia, so that paint it in my garage kind of thing. can't do it. All right, well, how do we pay somebody to paint this? Nope, not going to happen. Not going to be able, there's no way that people are going to be able to afford to pay that, right? So a bit out of necessity, but then we start to grow this concept of embracing that to say, what about we just give people the blank canvas? And so you'll see this in my social media posts. I talk about being the author of your own sporting tradition. So what you have there in your hands, when Phil holds that up and it's blank, is he's got an empty novel. And all of a sudden, he is the author with the pen, and he gets to start writing his tradition rather than handing that off to another decoy manufacturer to write it for him. Now, when he hunts that decoy and all of the other Dixie decoys that he hunts, he knows that decoy, that line on the tail is a little, I messed that one up, or my kid painted that one, or this one I started to run out of black, so I had to mix it with this. Like every decoy tells an individual story, and he can look at all those in his rig. And now he is not only just, he's not just a participant in the hunt, he owns the entirety of his experience. So to answer your question in a very big circle, that is why we offer blank decoys and the paint kits to the customer so they can own their tradition.
No, I absolutely love that. I think it's so unique, and again, it separates you guys from any other decoy company. And you know, the old saying is, you know, if the duck is close enough to realize your decoy is a decoy, you should be shooting it anyways. So,
Right.
you know, my father used to make decoys out of fiberglass back in the '80s. Goose decoys were hunting for field hunting. So I remember the smell of fiberglass in the basement many a time. So, but I think I just love what you guys do. I think it appeals to a lot of like the memories that you can associate with a decoy, kind of what you said there. I think it really speaks to a lot of guys, especially once you've seen it all, done it all in this kind of game. You just tend to look for new ways to make memories. And I think it's pretty special what you guys have going.
Oh, thanks. And you know, I mean, really, if you're purely utilitarian about this, it makes a lot of sense. Think about all of your time spent duck hunting, right? How much time do you spend actually like on the duck call or pulling the trigger? Like, it's not a lot. How much time do you spend rigging decoys, putting them in bags, organizing them in your storage shelf, thinking about your system for deploying them, and then, or even just looking at them while you're hunting, right? So like now, for something that just as a weighted average of how much time and effort you put into stuff, now you're directly invested in that piece of gear that you probably spend more time than anything else using.
Makes sense. I like
Phil,
it.
did you have anything to add about sort of the blank decoy thing?
So
As the user's experience?
like, as you mentioned, right? Like every decoy is a blank, right? You know, it's a book waiting to be written. But at least like when it comes to these, like you even mentioned, you know, that they're not shelf grade. Well, I'd be honored to have this sitting on my shelf, right? Like obviously this isn't, you know, a completely weathered decoy. I painted this one myself. This was donated to the Wild for Hope charity event, which obviously has been put on hold for now, so it's still on my mantle, but it sits up there proud like a piece of heritage, right? And just like what you guys have done, like even like with the new Durabills, like how many decoys can you do that and she don't break? That's a quality product. I've taken these things, I run a spread of 5 dozen. They've been dragged over rocks. They've been banged off the side of the boat more times than I can count. And like further to what you said, you know, each decoy tells a story. Well, I've got one bluebill that's taken a round of pellets and you can't even tell. Well, that decoy was shot when a client shot a banded longtail.
Oh, cool.
That decoy tells a story. And that duck that was shot was actually one of Dr. Scott Petrie's banded longtails. It had a transmitter as well.
Wow.
And like,
and I geek out when I hear customers tell us that stuff. They're like, they send me pictures. Do you know that my son painted this with me and he killed his first mallard over this? And vivid description of how the duck turned when he called and he cupped up and everything, and like every stroke of the paint. And it's like, they're directly connecting probably, you know, one of the most important sporting memories that any sportsman could have to this decoy that they did themselves, you know, and that's our why, right? Like, we are trying to provide the inspiration to connect people to their past and preserve their traditions.
Like, and every time I'm hunting and I deploy that decoy and I see it, I'm gonna remember that hunt.
Yeah.
Right.
And you know what? There's got to be some satisfaction to that. Like, how many times have you heard dog owners say, "My dog that I trained just went out and retrieved my duck. I just shot the banded transmitter sprig, you know, bull fucking pintail that I've wanted for 10 years, and I shot it over the decoy that I painted." Like, that got to be, you know, to play into it, Phil, that's got to bring in some pretty crazy memories. And as, like, for you as an outfitter, you know, every time you take clients out, that's the possibility of a new story for you to be able to pass on while you're waiting for that next flock of birds to come in, and someone says, "Oh, what's going on with that decoy out there? It looks a little rough." It got shot up when it got abandoned fucking old squaw. You know what I mean? So that's awesome. That's really good. Brad, I really wanted to touch on something that you really, really briefly brought up. And that is when you're talking to people and people say, "Well, my ducks need to have this and they need to have that," and stuff. And you had mentioned, well, that's what you're comfortable with. So for some reason, and I'm not going to get into this huge debate, and I'm sure there's a ton of people that's ready to fucking pull my hair out when they hear me say this, but this whole flocked head and all of this stuff, I don't think that it's a necessity. But if it's what makes you comfortable and makes the hunt more enjoyable, then go for it. Have at it. Fill your boots. But I don't think we need these things, and it touches in a little bit onto the fact that your decoys don't have eyes. Okay, if you're going to lose sleep over your next hunt because your decoys don't have eyes, I think it's a comfort level, not anything else.
And so we get customers who will. You can go on our website and you can see the Keith's prescribed paint templates. It's literally paint by the numbers. He's got everything there. Put the black on the number 5, put the white on the number 1. It's all there. You buy the paint kit in the correct colors, the correct quantities, step by step. It's all good. People do that and they're like, I had to put eyes on it, man. It just was something wasn't right. And I'm like, do it. That's the beauty about painting your own, because like, if you do think my ducks need then guess what? You can paint your decoys exactly how you see when the ducks are where they're at, where by you in the migration. Maybe it's a slightly different color, or maybe they're not full, whatever it is. You need to outfit yourself in such a way that provides you the most enjoyable experience. Okay. And if that means that I need an acrylic coral, it has to be tuned in this, it has to be, made from this specific kind of tree from this forest, like that's, and if you don't have that in your entire hunt, you're only thinking like, you know what, those ducks would have turned if I would have had this call turned from this thing and from this tree. Like, if you're being distracted from making the memories, preserving your traditions, then you should buy the gear that makes you most comfortable. And if that's flocked heads and glass eyes and photorealistic plastic decoys that are gorgeous, by the way, these are pure replications of some of the most talented carvers that we're just blessed to be alive with. Okay. Mm-hmm. So incredible that you can get a decoy now that it's the exact replica of some of these most talented carvers, like their entries into the worlds. Mm-hmm. They look exactly like ducks. How awesome is that, right? And that we're alive in such a time where when you have so many options, right? If you think that that's what you need, then that's exactly what you should get, so that you can focus. Then when you go out, you say, hey, if there's no ducks that show up, I can't do anything about that. But if they're here, I want to know, and I want to feel good that I did everything I could to bring them into my spread. And if that's what you need, then that's what you should do. And if you buy our decoys and you need to put eyes on them, or you need to flock the heads, and that's exactly what you should freaking do, because I'm less concerned that you follow our prescribed paint schedule and more concerned that you are connecting with your hunt.
That's a pretty good answer, Brad. I'm not going to lie to you, bud. Listen, the decoys, yeah. I'm going to tell you, I love the decoys. I love the history. I love your story behind it. But, buddy, I'm going to tell you, I think your apparel line has some of the nicest clothing that's out there for a lifestyle brand, that Waterman Sporting Company. That, listen, I am a duck hunter, and it doesn't always have to be a camouflage. It doesn't always have to be in the browns and the greens and the black. You know what I mean? Tell us a little bit. So you had Dixie Decoys, then you branched off, because it's two totally separate entities, correct?
Different, same company, same website, different brand. Yep.
So is the apparel line, because I've seen some of your stuff, but is it always tied in to bring back to that tradition? Because some of your apparel, it goes back to the old school ways of things, right? And just are you seeing somewhat of a resurgence with people wanting to connect with that old style? I guess, yeah, just trying to build on the history, or relive the history.
Sure. I think anecdotally, there's, you could probably, like, if you wanted to find that those market trends, you look at, there's certain brands out there that have heritage collections and those sorts of things. So obviously, if some of the larger brands are doing it, it would lead me to believe that there is higher demand for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think what we would like to see is probably less of it being like a trendy thing, and more of like a sort of that restorative nature, that like bringing back the old to the new, right? So we would say, out with the new and in with the old. That's one of our sayings. I think that there is, again, like the decoy, so different brands, but the same sort of central mission of connecting those people to their past and helping them preserve the tradition for the future. I think that there is, at least this is, what we're going to pursue. There is a need in people's hearts to feel connected to their roots, to their heritage as sportsmen, right? And part of doing that is achieving some. Sorry, I'm sitting outside. I'm gonna get destroyed by mosquitoes. But part of that is outfitting themselves in such a way that immerses them in this feeling of heritage, right? And so that's what we do. So the story of Waterman Sporting Company was, we had Dixie Decoys, and we're like, maybe let's just sell some hats with it. Like, let's give that a shot. So we did, like the Richardson R112, that's like the hat that everybody has. Put your logo on it, put a name on it, and all of a sudden you have a Waterfowl brand, right? Like, get a Gildan shirt or Richardson hat, come up with a logo, and you got a Waterfowl company. Done.
This guy right here, buddy.
Yeah. That's like the 2016 Waterfowl starter pack.
Yep.
So that's how it started, and then we noticed that, when we're going out to shows and sales data on the website, like, wow, people actually really like this apparel. Okay, so let's put some effort into thinking about what it is that we want to do. Consistent with our brand, we want it to be historically inspired. So I'll give you the summation. Same principle, giving you all of the modern technology that you want today: lightweight, waterproof, breathable, flexible, all of the kit that you want, but reviving historical styles. So what you're seeing right now is sort of that transition from the Richardson R112, the Gildan T-shirts kind of thing, to traditionally inspired, I would call it, utility apparel. So we're maybe getting away from some of the casual stuff and getting into more of the, like, you actually use this to hunt. The beautiful part about these historically inspired designs is that they were worn by gentlemen, so that, you know, you don't have to look like a slob when you go to the marsh. You can take your waders off and you can go out to dinner, or you can go to church, or, you know, or maybe go into the office if you run your own business or whatever. So that's where you're seeing us transition to. And of course we have camouflage. I'm not saying that camouflage is not important, but if we're going to do camo, it's probably not going to be like the modern stuff. So we just tell you the real quick story about our camouflage pattern. It's what some might call the old, and there's trademarks here, so I'm not going to say different words and stuff, but like the old style, the retro Duck Hunters camo. So we took that, I put in the research because I knew that it looked very similar to what the Marine Corps wore in World War II in the Pacific. Turns out, yep, that's where that Duck Hunters camo came from, was there. But the way that pattern started was this guy named Norval Gillespie in the 1920s. He was a botanist, and he wrote for when Better Homes and Gardens was actually Better House and Gardens. He wrote for that magazine and other publications. But basically, he was a botanist, and he was observing frogs in the garden, and that was he replicated their skin, which was this crypsis pattern. Crypsis in wildlife means camouflage. So he replicated that, and he made it into sort of like a pattern. And as we entered the war in the Pacific, General MacArthur sort of hastily ordered, they were testing a bunch of uniforms, hastily ordered 150,000 units of jungle pattern. And if you were in the Army, what you had was a full set of coveralls. And if you were in the Marine Corps, it was a blouse and trousers, which was reversible. You had a jungle pattern on one side and what they called a beach pattern on the other. We would call it like desert today. Okay. Long story short, that's where it was born, was on the backs of Marines and soldiers in the Pacific. What happened is after World War II, that all of the surplus uniforms and tentage and think about all that really heavy canvas fabric that they used to make tents out of. That's all left over. And so those Army Navy surplus stores started to buy that up, and they started cutting it up and making it into clothing. So when you have all these vets returning that are going back out into the marsh to kill ducks, what's the because camouflage for hunters is not a thing then, right? What do you revert to? You revert to what you know, okay? So then these sporting goods companies start to take it, and they start to change the colors, right? And so now we're getting away from the jungle colors and that really very bright beach color to what kind of the colors that we associate with today. So how does our camo pattern play into this? Well, we took the original pattern that the Marines wore in World War II, we digitized that, and we've changed the colors to suit us. But that's what you find if you see a camo garment on our website. It's what Marines would have worn in World War II, the same exact pattern. So doing things that are historically relevant and have meaning, not just because they look cool or they're vintage or retro, that there's a deeper meaning to and understanding, and trying to tell people this story, like, you know, this is Duck Hunters camo, but actually there's deeper roots here. You know, this is, you know, one of our nation's and our world's most significant fights that we undertook. That's where this camo came from.
That's pretty cool. I had no idea, but it makes sense. Totally makes sense. I want to shift focus a little bit. So 3 years in Australia. I know there's a waterfowl community over in Australia. So just, you know, is it as, I don't know, I want to say glamorized, but I know that's a strong word, but is the waterfowl hunting in Australia to the same as what it is mostly in the States and in Canada at a fraction of what it is in the States? But is it as glamorized, I guess, you know, where you have TV shows and families that are, you know, followed 24/7 because of their waterfowl hunting?
I would say, and I don't want to speak for Australians, but I think I could pretty safely say that there was no way you would get away with like a cable network hunting show, sort of at all. Specifically a duck hunting show. Any what we sort of just associate is like, yeah, it's a hunting show. You see ducks getting shot, deer getting down, and things like that. In Australia, that's a no. That is a no. Hunting is it is tolerated. It's not sort of.
Oh wow.
It would be culturally significant, right? It's very important to the history, but
Yeah.
The animal rights community, the environmental lobby is much stronger there than it is in U.S. particularly. Maybe not Canada and Australia would probably be similar.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no way that the public would allow that on their TV. But a much smaller community, but not any less sort of passionate about their sport, right?
Yeah.
I think so. There's two. So Victoria in the southeast of Australia, and then South Australia right next to it. They still have a duck season. Tasmania does as well, and then the Northern Territory has a very limited waterfowl season as well. But New South Wales, Queensland, West Australia have all banned duck shooting, as they call it. So 40 estimates, but 45,000 licensed hunters in Victoria, somewhere around 6,000 in South Australia. So you can see, like, compared to U.S. numbers, compared to Canadian numbers, incredibly small. So in terms of their media, there was one company that is sort of pioneers, and they sort of followed like the Duck Commander route of doing the DVDs and things like that. Many years later, right? So the DVDs, what we've been doing for decades, is only a couple of years ago, and now they're transitioning to making the social media videos and things like that. And they make duck calls and decoys and different gear, but there's really only kind of like that one or two company that actually make gear for the Australian duck hunter. Most of the stuff is bought from the U.S. Or it's just so very, very, very old.
Right.
But they're still making it work and enjoying it just fine. The hunting activity itself, I will say, having come from basically 3 straight years before I left of just absolutely abysmal hunting conditions in the Carolinas, when I went there and the bag limit was 10, and I was, of course, I'm the American there, I'm new, so I sort of, I probably got some special treatment, got taken to like the secret spots kind of thing, but it was incredible hunting, incredible. And the birds there are beautiful. The birds, the habitat, the entire experience, very similar to the North American waterfowling experience. There's nothing like, oh, that's different. That's a different style. No, it's pretty much the same gear, same tactics. The Pacific black duck sounds like a mallard, about the same size as a mallard, quacks like a mallard, reacts like it, does the same thing. It's just different, different colored duck. So it was all very similar. So it was very familiar, but it was like different enough, like you think, I told the story when I wrote an article there about ramp traffic, and you're like, so you wake up maybe 15 minutes later and you got your coffee, and then you go to the ramp and you're like, damn it, somebody's going to beat me there. And then like every truck heading towards the ramp, you're like, oh, they're going, right? And they're like, no, this guy's just heading to work. So it's like ramp traffic. Well, the ramp traffic in Australia, as we turn off of this side road to side road to side road, were kangaroos, So like that, it was like this very familiar experience about, oh, did we wake up early enough? Are we going to beat the traffic? But it's like the only people racing us to the ramp are kangaroos,
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, but I got to go on 2 trips. You can see the videos on the 2019 trip. I did a 3-part series called Dixie Down Under. It doesn't have me in it, so I was very much telling the Australian experience, their sort of their lifestyle, chapter 1, their history. Met up with a guy who's a noted author and historian, covering 20,000 years of decoy history there, all the way back to the Aboriginal community there.
Wow.
And then the 3rd chapter is about the politics of the fight to save Australian waterfowl. So that is one thing that sort of the takeaway for I would say to this audience here is like, we really can't underappreciate how good we have it here, and that you know, if you go to Australia, you have to deal with people in blaze orange vests holding, you know, 20-foot white flags and blowing whistles, standing, as long as they're 30 meters from you, all is legal, because they have just as much right to be in that marsh as you, right? Like that's not every Australian duck hunter's experience.
Right.
I didn't experience there, but it is very common, and they have a much more politically driven process. They don't have the same amount of science that we benefit from, right? Like they have like one organization where we have DU and Delta with their own science departments embedded. They're basically relying on one study, like one dude who flies a friggin' Cessna over these transects, and he sits there and he counts birds, and he says, well, if they were in this marsh last year and they're not here now, so they must all have died. You know, not that waterfowl can actually fly and move, but if they're not there now, the only logical conclusion then, not that they moved, that they flew, that they used their wings, that they died. And so this is how the seasons are set. So that's what I would say is, like, we are very, very blessed to live where we live and enjoy what we can enjoy.
Very, very true. Very, very good point to add on. We are extremely, extremely lucky. We touched on it a little bit at the beginning, and I really wanted to bring it up now. And Phil, you could probably talk a little bit more to this than what Brad can, but I know Brad will probably chime in. But getting Dixie Decoys up into Canada, like Brad and I had a conversation a year ago, and it's just, we're hammered, like we're so handcuffed. But I would love to see more of them in Canada. I'd love to be able to use them myself. How, like, what's the process? How are we able to get more Dixie in Canada, especially right here in Southern Ontario, where we had that big diver and population?
Like, your best bet, and like I run a spread of 5 dozen Dixies now, and the initial 6 that I bought when I started as a staffer with Dixie, they were shipped straight from the U.S. up here to Canada. And of course, you know, the government, they got their piece of the pie as well when I had to go pick them up at the post office. But in all honesty, like for those guys that network enough, like I'm fortunate to have a number of friends in the U.S. close to the borders, and they know, like, you know, I'll travel anywhere to buy something. Like I went to Minnesota to buy a boat, went to Ohio to buy a dog, went to Iowa to buy a dog. Honestly, your best bet is if you got the right friend, you can ship them to your friend's place, say close to the border. And we all, you know, our good friend there, Jordan, there out in New York State, like he's been fortunate enough to open his garage for me if need be. But like your best bet is to ship them to a U.S. address. And if you're in the States for like a weekend, pick them up, bring them over. Like I think we're allowed $750 or $800 now for a weekend to bring stuff back. That's more than enough Dixies. Or if you're down there with a few buddies, you know, they're not buying a lot of stuff. Hey, you know,
yeah,
you mind tacking these onto your your
piggyback onto your buddies. Yeah, for sure.
But that's your best bet, is just ship them to the border. You know, if you're going down for a weekend, pick them up, bring them back. Yeah, like our dollar, you know, it's taken a dump, and it has for quite some time. But at the end of the day, like these decoys, like my grandkids are going to hunt over these. No questions asked. And so like, I've got some that have gotten shot. You can touch them up. They've been dragged over paint. They've dragged over rocks, banged into boats and stuff. You're going to cry once. You're going to buy once. Spend the money. Like you can go buy a $2,000 shotgun or a $200 shotgun, right? What's going to last longer? Buy once, cry once.
Yeah.
And like I couldn't tell you how many times I've flipped plastic decoys, whether it be puddlers or divers, and you know, just because I needed new ones. Like these are getting banged up, they're full of holes, they sink. These ain't gonna sink. Like unless you tie a 10-pound weight to it and a 5-pound rope, and you're in 20 feet of water, it's the only way you're gonna sink the damn thing, right? And as Brad mentioned, like, you know, you're diver hunting, those birds skirt the decoys. Decoys are gonna get shot. It happens.
Yeah.
And I've had one or two that have taken a few hits, and I'm not worried about them. But who cares? Yeah, they got holes in them. They're still going to float.
Clients are always going to shoot the decoys.
Yeah, don't shoot decoys. But like they're going to last, right? So there's always a means and a ways to if you want something bad enough, you'll get it in your hands.
Yeah.
My best option is to send it to a buddy close to the border, and make a weekend of it, go shopping, treat the wife, whatever, right? And bring them back, because then you'll skate the taxes part at the very least, right?
Yeah,
sorry, I just have to interject. I just have to say, Dixie Decoys follows all state, federal, and international import laws. We will ship to you exactly what you put in. It is incumbent upon you to pay the appropriate duties. And yeah, just
disclaimer.
Nice.
Lawyer, I said that.
Disclaimer.
Yes. Yeah. Nice ad there. No, but that's a good point, Brad, because for people that don't have that ability, I guess the biggest thing is that you need to understand that listen, Dixie is still shipped to Canada. It'll still get delivered to your door. You just need to understand that there might be a little bit extra of a charge because of the duties. And you know what? If you think you're not paying that duty anywhere else, then you're wrong, because no matter what you buy, you can buy it in Canada from whatever store you want. The duty is absorbed into that price that you're buying from that store. You're not escaping duty.
That's right.
That's correct. And so I would just let me talk straight to the Canadian audience here. If you want something on the website, send us an email, tell me exactly what you want, and let me go to work to find you the best shipping rate, to work with you on finding other possible addresses that could, but basically, hey, not get into it. Shipping calculators on our web is very complicated stuff. So if you're going to get a price and it's going to be ridiculous, just contact me. Don't worry about it. Don't freak out. Let me try and take care of it for you. If it's going to be too much, that's fine. But you need to let me try to do better for you, because I promise I'm probably going to be able to do a little bit better than what you initially see. Understand that you are going to have, Canadian government is going to take their piece. So when it shows up, if you've paid everything, don't email me and say, why do I have to pay the that's an electoral problem for you, not a Dixie Decoys problem. So yes, we do ship we ship to Australia. We have customers in France. I got stuff going out to Norway. I've got customers in the UK. This is more for the apparel stuff, but yeah, absolutely. We'll take care of you.
Yeah,
that's one thing I can attest for any, say, Canadian customers. Message Brad directly, and you will be looked after. Like the customer service, right? Like it ties back to their mission, right? Helping the guys out, looking after the customers, and keeping the heritage strong.
I think that's an absolutely unbelievable way to put an end to the show, fellas. I think it was a fabulous show. Lots of history, Brad, which I really appreciate of. And I really like the fact that there's a face behind the company, and if someone is having some trouble with anything, they can email you directly, and you will work with them. Not saying that it's always going to work out perfect, but at least the effort's going to go in there. Brad, I cannot thank you enough for I know it's been a crazy couple weeks for you, and carving some time in your schedule to come sit down with us and talk. And I know I absolutely love it. I'll let the boys have their turn, but I can't thank you enough. I hope that we can have you back on again, maybe in a couple months, once we start hunting birds and get some good stories, and maybe have some good stories to tell you as well. So love to be able to extend that invite to you once again in a couple months. Awesome. I really, really appreciate it. I can't stress it enough. Philly or Ryan, to you, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Brad. Hope you have your continued success, and keep promoting your brand. Like I said, you guys are one of a kind, and keep separating yourselves from the rest.
Thank you very much. Pleasure meeting you.
Likewise.
Philly, last to you, my man.
Brad, great seeing you again. Glad to have you back, on home soil, so to speak, right?
Yeah. Great to see you too, Phil.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, I would just say, Damien, two closing points for me.
Yeah.
One is a quick announcement. Last year, we were selected by Delta Waterfowl to do a special edition decoy for them for their events package. This is one of those collector's decoys that would be auctioned off, and that money would generate funds for Delta Waterfowl. Very successful. It was very well received. We worked specifically with Delta Waterfowl to create a decoy that was tied directly to the founding of Delta Waterfowl, and specifically, I'm saying this to Canada as well, to Lake Manitoba and the Delta Marsh. So without saying too much, look in the next week for us to make an announcement of this new decoy that will be available exclusively through Delta Waterfowl through the 2020-2021 banquet season, that directly revives a historical decoy style that is tied to the founding of Delta Waterfowl. So I won't say any more than that. Any decoy nerd out there is immediately going to pick up on what I'm saying, but look for that announcement. The bigger announcement is that come January 2021, we will take that and we will be able to offer it for sale as a painted gunner. So we've talked a lot about the blank decoys and you painting, and we're going to continue that, but this will be the first decoy where you can pull it out of the box, rig it, and hunt it, right? So that's coming. You'll get that announcement next week. And the last thing I would say is, folks, you hear about, well, Dixie Decoys is all about the good old days and back when there were ducks abound, whatever. I would just say the good old days are now. These are the good old days because you are alive now and you will preserve your traditions for the future, and they'll look back longingly on your good old days. So just don't ever underappreciate how good you have it right now. You are living in the greatest time that there has ever been to be alive. It is right now. Take advantage of it. Connect with your heritage and preserve your traditions for the future because they're only the next generation away from being gone forever. Thanks for having me on.
No, thank you. Everybody, thank you so much for watching another episode of the Union 0430. Again, we are so lucky to continually put out invites, have industry leaders agree to come on and hang out with us knuckleheads and give us some education on what they're all about. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, download our podcasts, follow us on social media, and please, if you have any suggestions to make this show better, please let us know. Let's make the Union 0430 the best show that's out there for the waterfowling community. Brad, thank you again so much. I can't stress it enough. Philly, Ryan, love yous. Big love to everybody. Be good.